I've remembered to hit the record button. So we are now recording. So there's still people streaming in, but I think we might as well crack on. So once again, it gives me great pleasure to welcome back Vicki Miller from Visit Scotland. Vicki's become something of a regular contributor to our Tuesday morning sessions. So Vicki, thank you once again for your time. And I know it is time because I know presentations have to be put together and so forth. For those of you that don't know Vicki, Vicki is effectively marketing director of Visit Scotland. She's got a very convoluted title, which I'm sure she can tell us in a minute. She is head of marketing and has presented the latest state of play in terms of Visit Scotland's focus 2 or 3 times over the last 3 to 6 months. So Vicki, we're hugely grateful to you for giving us your time again and for the time which I know goes into the preparation. So I think without further ado, if I could possibly hand the baton to you, that would be very much appreciated. And we look forward to hearing what latest views are, latest developments are from Visit Scotland.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Roddy, and thank you for having me back and giving me this opportunity. So I've got a packed slide deck. So what I will do is make sure that, Roddy, you get a copy of this and we can circulate, because you'll see there's some quite detailed slides in here, but it will allow everybody to kind of maybe read in detail what I maybe will only cover in some highlights today, just because of time. I'm very happy to take questions as well after the event if we don't cover everything. So I'm going to focus largely on our kind of leisure marketing area, which is kind of what I'm responsible for at Visit Scotland. I will touch very briefly on business events and Sterg, just because Riddle couldn't be with us today. He's got another, he had another event that he was attending. So I'm going to do a quick recap of where we've been, but I'm going to focus on some of the insights coming out of, I guess, the summer. Talk about what that means going forward, what our strategic marketing approach is now, because I think the last time I spoke to you, we talked about respond, reset, restart, recover as being our phases. But clearly, you know, even just a few months on from, I think, when we last spoke, we're in a very different world with a tier system and complex, because obviously the tiers are different across the UK and we still have many travel restrictions globally. So it needed a slightly different approach. I'll talk about what that means. Also then want to talk about, I guess, what will again hopefully be that restart in 21 when we see travel open up with the positive news of vaccine and all of that, and what I think therefore are the building blocks to recovery. So quick recap, as you know, for us since March, the absolute priority has been keeping Scotland top of mind in all of our key markets. And this slide really is just a kind of top level summary of what we have been doing. We started with Our Absence Makes the Heart Grow Fonder global campaign, which was really about a heartfelt message to say that Scotland will still be here. And while you can't travel right now, there is all of this Scotland has got to offer to look forward to in the future. We then, obviously, when the industry opened up, we got the go-ahead that the industry opened up on the 15th of July, we launched our Only in Scotland campaign. And it was our absolute intention for that campaign to start in Scotland, which it did, and concluded. So we ran a whole programme of activity in Scotland to go out across the wider UK, but then to extend that internationally. Now, unfortunately, because of the ever-changing situation, the tier systems, and obviously the ongoing travel restrictions, we have never been able to deploy that campaign because it was very much with a visit now message internationally. We were able to start the campaign across the wider UK, but obviously towards the end of October, we had to put that on pause. There are still some aspects live, and I'll touch on that in a minute. And I guess as well as that inspirational content, what has been really important is that we give guidance to visitors that have been able to travel about actually all of the hard work and investment that businesses have made to make it a safe experience. So we created a lot of what I would call that kind of help and reassurance content around how Scotland has responded to keep our visitors safe. And then just more recently, we had our Scotland Reconnect. So this was a business-to-business event where we unfortunately were unable to obviously deliver Expo, which is usually our big travel trade event on territory in April. What we did do was we created, using a new virtual events air platform, we had our first business-to-business virtual networking event, and we brought 260 buyers together with 240 businesses from across Scotland there in November. And I think what really came out of that event is that there is a really strong appetite for Scotland, that when travel resumes, Scotland remains on the must-visit list for many of the kind of intermediaries that we were that we have relationships with and that are interested in coming to Scotland. So I think some positive news coming out of that event, and very likely that we are going to now repeat that event in 2021, but more on that later. So we did, as I say, ran a campaign across Scotland and the wider UK, and this is just a very high level kind of results from that campaign. What I talked to you, I think the last time, was that very much our approach is that it's a fully integrated campaign. It uses a mix of channels, and it aligns with the customer journey, so that we are following the customer from that awareness to thinking about Scotland, planning that trip, booking the trip, and of course keeping in touch with them when either through our kind of email communications, but that whole advocacy piece, leveraging their experiences of Scotland that they share on social media. And I'll talk more about social media and the important role that that has played during this pandemic. What you can see there is that we worked with a number of key partners. So we had a media partnership with Hearst and the BBC. So that was kind of more publishing content. We had a partnership with Expedia, which is about driving bookings. And we had a partnership with TripAdvisor, which was about promoting all of the different regions of Scotland and the attractions that were open and good to go, and putting suggested itineraries and points of interest through the TripAdvisor platform. So these were kind of three really key strategic partnerships that I think have worked for us very well. Expedia is the key partnership that we have actually kept going. And while the focus is not about reaching audiences right now, because obviously the travel restrictions, what we are able to do with Expedia is actually get to those that are looking at that kind of January onwards, so that those kind of what we would call forward lookers. So getting to the audiences that are starting to plan for 21 and getting Scotland in front of them. And on Expedia, we created quite an immersive Scotland hub with what you would call traffic drivers driving people to that Scotland hub and presenting the many different aspects of Scotland, from city breaks to kind of rural coastal breaks, promoting things like Year of Coast and Waters. And actually we had a number of the destination organisations across Scotland actually join us and invest in that campaign activity as well. And what you can see there is that to date, I think it's something like 7 million in additional bookings that we have driven. Something like, and I can't actually see the figure on my own screen, but over nearly 65,000 additional bed nights. And what we really learned with that partnership from Expedia is that through the content that we created in Scotland, in that Scotland hub on the Expedia platform, we were able to drive a greater geographic dispersal of bookings than what TripAdvisor would normally see for Scotland. So I think there were some positives in there. Okay, so what's coming out of the summer really? I think what we did see, and we've been tracking that sentiment from across the UK for a number of months now, and that sentiment tracker is due to finish in January, but we're actually now going to extend it. And what we've also done is partner with Visit Britain to look at a new sentiment tracker for international markets, and I actually will get the first insights just before Christmas from that new international tracker. But what we've seen, certainly domestically, was that there was a really strong intent for Scotland this summer, right up there with the kind of southeast of England. We estimate that roughly about 30% of UK residents took a domestic holiday over that summer period. And I think the positive is that we really did, I guess, grab the imagination of Scots, and they stayed at home. They did what we asked, which was to kind of really, through that Only in Scotland campaign, stay at home and support your tourism industry. And that's actually what we saw happen. I mentioned that social media, I think, has played such an important role in sharing, a virtual bit of Scotland, on a regular basis every day. And actually, we've seen the highest engagement levels that we've ever seen on our social media, reaching audiences of over 40 million. There were some months where it actually was up there at 60 million, but on average about 40 million per month. And that was because of the kind of likes, comments and shares that we were seeing, and therefore we were reaching that, what I would call non-followers, so people that are not currently following Visit Scotland social media channels. What we also saw in the summer was that our web traffic, which had dipped clearly, obviously from March, first time ever in many years that we had seen levels that we experienced from March onwards, but actually very quickly in the summer, our web traffic returned to normal levels, but the increase in traffic was coming from the UK market, and international to date still remains lower than it obviously was in 2019, whereas the UK market was up. However, we have seen, and as you can imagine with the current lockdown restrictions, that intent for travel, certainly in the tracking results that we saw in November, was still quite low. But interestingly, we are seeing a change in search behaviour more recently. I think with news of the vaccine, we have actually seen for the first time at the end of November there, certainly an increase in international traffic on what we had been seeing. So again, green shoots there from an international perspective. I think what we've also seen the pandemic do is actually reinforce, I think, some of the trends that we were starting to see pre-pandemic. And I would encourage you to go and look at the Insights paper. So there's the little infographic there on the right-hand side. The infographic, the paper, which was created by our Insight team, is on VisitScotland.org, and I would urge you to kind of go and have a look. But really what we've seen, I think, during the pandemic is that greater connection and importance of the outdoors, with new younger audiences enjoying the outdoors and staying at home to enjoy the outdoors, which is a positive. Trends like wellness, that connection with local people and place and authenticity being really, really important as part of what people are looking for in a holiday. And interestingly, not just about experiential travel, but in transformative travel, where people are actually traveling with more purpose. So whether that is to do something that actually is about educating themselves, or indeed even giving back to local communities. And I think that also plays into that increasing awareness around the environmental impact of travel, and people looking at what can they do to offset that. So I think some interesting trends that we are seeing. A growth in luxury travel, and I think those kind of bucket list experiences, which again is really interesting and a huge opportunity. And I think what we will see coming out of this, and certainly from the insight we gained from Scotland Connect, the recent B2B event, was that we will see more tour operators and travel agents focusing initially on FIT and small group travel, and that it will be that area that will recover quickly, versus the kind of larger group travel. The importance of technology in booking, and particularly booking for things like attractions and activities, because of obviously kind of COVID restrictions, and to allow for us to manage social distancing. And I think that's therefore a trend that is with us now to stay. The importance of obviously that hygiene and really providing that reassurance to our visitors, probably no surprise. Booking flexibility, particularly around cancellation terms, again comes out really strongly in the tracking results. And what we have definitely seen in terms of shorter lead times between actually searching for a holiday and booking, and I've got a bit more to evidence that in a minute. So out of the UK tracker, we ended up with some new COVID segments, which were really based around kind of behaviours and attitudes to the pandemic, which really highlighted that this life goes on segment, which typically was more professional people in your kind of AB social demographics, typically younger, so pre-nesters, and also people with families, interestingly, who were really wanting to allow, you know, that wanted travel, wanted to book and plan and take a holiday because they wanted that kind of normal life. And then some of the other segments where there was greater hesitation, pragmatic policy supporters, very much a kind of wanting to follow the rules laid out by government, strong believer in the approach that was being taken by governments in terms of safety measures and travel restrictions, but when told that it's okay to travel or okay to eat out, we're very happy to do so. So again, there is more information on VisitScotland.org around these different segments if you want to kind of delve into them a little bit more. But really what they've helped us to do is really improve our targeting so that we can get to the visitors that we know are in the market to travel. And this slide was actually one that I've taken from the presentation that Expedia shared with us around kind of the booking travel search and booking window. And so what you'll see is actually in the summer, that kind of really short 0 to 7 days lead time was actually up at 50%. We've seen through the course of November, it reduced slightly, and that longer lead time, that kind of planning for future breaks, so starting to increase, but really it has been that very much short planning booking window that we have seen over the last number of months. So looking back at pre-pandemic and kind of really where we started, and I guess thinking about what does this mean for the future, we can see the importance here of the domestic market. 78% over, and these figures are 3-year averages. That the UK market is very important in terms of volume, but obviously value, actually our international markets are hugely, hugely important. So while with the UK, we get that geographic and season spread, it tends to be more evenly spread out across the year. With international, it's obviously focused in that kind of main sort of spring, summer, early autumn months, but actually in value terms, it's really important. So really what this is saying is that without international, we will really struggle to get back to the kind of values of tourism pre-pandemic. You can see here what it means in terms of the importance of each of our different markets. In 2019, we had a phenomenal year from North America. It was our highest ever in terms of both volume and value. 2018, we had very strong performance from Europe. So you can see there that France, Germany and France are our key European markets. What's interesting coming out of the new IPS figures is you can see there the importance of markets like China, particularly in value terms. And so I'm going to talk about each of the kind of market insights in a moment. But what you can see here is the importance of these are key markets. And really to build back, we are going to need to have a really strong presence in each of these markets because we face some really stiff competition. So I've got some very detailed slides, and these are the slides that I think, you know, please take time to read. And if you have any further questions in your own time, please come back to me. I'm really just going to try and grab the kind of key highlights just now. So what does it mean? UK, as we know, there is reduced capacity across transport. There are still travel restrictions in place. But when travel does open up, we obviously will be competing with the other home nations. We know that the UK market is going to be really important to our early recovery next year. We want to be able to capitalise on these new visitors that we saw holidaying in Scotland for the first time in 2020. So that is the key opportunity to grow our share of the domestic market. Looking across France and Germany, we are competing with very strong stay-at-home messages coming from government, and obviously, I guess, destination organisations in these markets that are promoting that holiday at home, just as we are doing in the UK. Clearly, we've got Brexit to factor in here, so there are some additional challenges for us, and really extending our welcome in Europe as early as possible in the new year is something that we will be doing. And the key, I think, here is that we will maybe not see certainly the kind of connectivity through air return, I guess, to the frequency that we have seen. It will take time to build that. But equally with these markets, we know that there are other ways that our visitors can reach us. They are important to us. And very quickly, we want to be reassuring them that Scotland actually offers an experience that is close to home, a very safe experience that's close to home, that can give them something a little bit different. Moving on to other parts of Europe, I think Spain and Italy, the challenge here is that they've probably had the strictest of lockdown measures, long periods of time, and therefore likely to have affected, in terms of the economy and therefore the ability to spend on travel. So I think we will see a more cost-conscious consumers there, which presents again another interesting challenge, but not to say one that we shouldn't be tackling. These markets are particularly important. And interestingly, actually, we have seen from Italy quite a strong interest in Scotland over the last wee while, so something to particularly build on there. And then our Northern Europeans, who actually not significant in terms of volume previously, but actually in value, fairly hardy, and actually Brexit seems to be affecting them less. Sentiment to travel is that it will affect them, it's not going to affect them, and actually they're fairly hardy and keen to travel as soon as they can. So actually an opportunity there. Looking at the kind of longer haul markets, I guess the key issue here is that, or the opportunity is that both with US and Canada, we have direct flights into Scotland, and we are actually seeing these flights being loaded for 21, which is great. Clearly, there are still travel restrictions in place at the moment, but we think that when we are able to travel, what we will see is the importance of actually FIT and luxury, particularly from the US. And with Canada, we think it will be a returning, we have a strong VFR market, and it will be the VFR market that will rebound quicker. Again, what we're seeing in those markets is the airlines and actually some of the airports are already looking at that, kind of trialing those rapid testing at airports and offering that up as part of your booking of flights. So that kind of pre-travel testing, which again is also encouraging. Australia, I think the challenge, again, important in value terms for Scotland, but we know that obviously Australia is going to keep its borders closed. So actually the opportunity is more one for 2022. And then again, other key markets, China and India, while there are no direct routes into Scotland, we obviously have a number of routes into London from these markets. So again, very important to us, and Scotland will be part of that kind of wider UK break. And this is where working with Visit Britain for us is extremely important in these markets. Although in China, we do a fair amount solo. And again, anticipating that it will be FIT and luxury segments that will return first in these markets. And from the Middle East, again, likely to be the kind of VFR market. And with India, what's quite interesting is India is bucking the trend with a number of new routes into the UK. So again, a real opportunity with that market. So what does that all mean in terms of our approach? Well, it really means that we really need to be agile. And again, another kind of slightly complex slide. So let me talk you through this. So what it means this is really looking at our activity in the UK, where we have got obviously the different tier systems right across the UK. If I start bottom left, our approach is that where we are seeing kind of travel across the majority of the country being reasonably free, it's fairly normal marketing for us. It's across our paid, earned and owned channels. So fully integrated campaigns. Where we are seeing obviously more of the country with travel restrictions and elements of hospitality closed, then the focus of our messaging shifts. We are still running paid campaign activity, but it's more digital so that it can be highly targeted. There is still a book now element in areas where we can, but obviously where we can't, it's about encouraging people to think about 21. Where we have a situation where the majority of the country as it is now, with kind of very tight travel restrictions, and we can't really go further than really our own, particularly in Scotland, local authority area, we're focusing our efforts, we would focus our efforts on that activity in Scotland. And that's kind of really where we are just now, running very much a kind of Scotland Loves Local campaign to encourage people to support the industry, by buying vouchers, staying locally in local hotels, gifting accommodation for future visits, maybe as part of that kind of Christmas, as part of Christmas. So really kind of turning it to local. But underpinning all of that, all of the time, we are using many channels, which is about keeping Scotland top of mind and inspiring about future travel, but flexing to that travel and book now messaging where we can, tiers dependent. And very similar approach in terms of international. Again, if I start bottom left, where we've got air corridors and travel is possible, normal marketing for us, so fully integrated campaigns with a book now message. Where clearly we have got further restrictions, but where there are air corridors, again, normal marketing, but where there are restrictions, it's about encouraging people to think about Scotland in 2021. So it's that book for 21. And clearly where there are no air corridors and restricted travel, which there are for many of our markets, it is still that dream now and travel later, but start planning your 21 holiday to Scotland. So really complex situation where we've got to adjust our messaging really according to the situations in each of our key markets. Roddy, am I okay for time? I've got a few more slides that I will canter through, if that's okay. Okay.
Please carry on.
I'll keep going. So in terms of reset, I think the other thing that's really important to kind of highlight here was that just pre-pandemic, and I think Mark Croffel's actually on the call, we launched Scotland Outlook 2030, and that was our new tourism strategy. It was based on, I guess, a huge amount of insight, some of the trends that I mentioned earlier. It was also based on a huge industry consultation effort that STA undertook along with many other partners. And I think what that highlighted was that there was an opportunity to reset towards a more responsible future. And what this slide aims to do is kind of really summarise the definition of responsible tourism and all of the kind of key principles that underpin responsible tourism. And I think while we want to see the value of tourism return to pre-pandemic levels, I think very much everything that was, the vision within 2030 is still very relevant today. And it's about resetting in a responsible way, whereby actually we see that what we do, that tourism is that force for good, that it benefits the communities across Scotland, the visitor, and it's underpinned by those strands of social, economic, and importantly, environmental, because obviously we also, as a nation, have a net zero target to reach by 2045. So I think it still feels like it's the right time to kind of really reset and restart with that kind of responsible future in mind. And I think if anything the pandemic has done is really reinforce the importance actually that communities play and get in actually the visitor experience. And it's important that we take them with us and that they are very involved in every aspect of what we do to restart tourism. So what are our objectives for Restart? You will also know that the Cabinet Secretary, in addition to STERG, which has been very focused on supporting the industry and putting a number of things in place to help across the pandemic, across the months of the summer. The Minister also set up a task force which looked at different areas stimulating demand. It looked at what was other interventions were going to be needed for the longer, medium to long term to support industry, and what investment was going to be needed. And these are the kind of key aims that are summarised in that task force paper, which is also available to read on VisitScotland.org if you want to go and have a look. I'm going to focus on the two areas in bold, but clearly what's in there are the interventions that will be needed to secure our assets, to maintain and increase our domestic market share, to bring back international visitor value within a 2-year period, and to create the conditions for longer term resilience. So that's that whole investment and wider support piece, which goes into quite a lot of detail in the paper. But on the marketing side of things, well, what will be needed? Certainly brand building at scale, an always on, all year round approach in all of those key markets that I covered earlier. Continuing to inspire, but also to build confidence around Scotland as a responsible destination. Driving performance, so that's about getting to those life goals on those segments that will be the ones that are in the market for travel as soon as travel is opened up. And that will really involve us in looking at those key partnerships, the airlines, the tour operators, the intermediary platforms that will give us access to those audiences and be able to deliver that conversion very quickly. It will also need that community-centred and destination and sectoral working that I think we've actually been doing really well as a nation over this summer period. And it will also need the approach that we have seen around some new visitor management framework, strategy and activity. So I think in the summer this year, with many more people taking to the countryside, we saw people maybe not as well educated on responsible countryside behaviours. We also saw pressure on key parts of Scotland from an infrastructure point of view, and we obviously want to avoid that. So we have got a new strategy steering group, which is chaired by Malcolm. There are 3 different subgroups looking at what investment is needed in infrastructure, what marketing and education is needed to encourage that responsible countryside behaviour, and indeed those new to the countryside audiences to come back to Scotland, but to enjoy Scotland in a responsible way. And there is also a group looking at kind of policy and enforcement and those kind of visitor management challenges on the ground. And I think that will be needed to really ensure that we, I guess, can ensure that from a community perspective that we are restarting in the right way to encourage the right, certainly visitor behaviours. It will also be important that we continue with this approach of fully integrated campaign activities that will look at activity all year round, but right across the spectrum of the customer journey, very agile in nature and very targeted based on, I think, the conditions that we see in each of our different markets. So really being flexible. So what does that mean for now? It means that we are currently in the middle of our winter campaign, which is very Scotland-centric because of the travel restrictions, very much about encouraging Scots to support the industry now. We will be running a campaign in Europe in January with Scottish Government. It will be across Live, Visit, Work, Study and Invest. And you will see some new campaign creative hitting our key European markets from the 1st of January, and that will include a concerted effort around the visit strand as well. We are also then planning for a big spring push when hopefully travel will open up, so a new global campaign, hopefully across all markets, but indeed with that kind of flexible approach that I've outlined. And we will be looking to run on the B2B side another version of Scotland Reconnects in April next year. And we're also looking at a new Scots agent education programme, because again, one of the insights we've seen during this pandemic is the growth in actual travel agents and advisors. So we're trying to build up our database of travel agents and advisors across all of our key markets and looking at an education programme tailored to their needs in order that they can sell Scotland effectively for us. quickly on business events, because I know for many of you it's hugely important.
Vicki,
I think I asked Neil really just...
Vicki, sorry, could I just interrupt for a moment, because
absolutely.
I want to get a quick update from Mark Crothwell, who needs to go at 10:45.
Absolutely.
Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I thank you very much indeed. But if Mark is still there, which I'm hoping he is, Mark has very kindly agreed to, I think he will comment on one or two things you've been talking about, but he's agreed to give us a quick update from the point of view of the Scottish Tourism Alliance as well. Mark, are you still with us?
Yeah, still here, Roddy. Thanks very much, and I'll let you have a cup of coffee, Vicky. So, well done. I think you've captured everything really well in that presentation. There's a huge amount of work that's going on by Visit Scotland and others working together in collaboration, and that's going to be the key to our recovery plan. And as Vicky's outlined, you know, Scotland Outlook 2030, very, very relevant, especially community peace and rebuilding. Right now, as we know, nobody apart from those who live in Scotland can holiday in Scotland, and we're faced with that challenge, even over the Christmas period, where there was some further clarity needed on the Christmas bubbling. So it is down to the point where, even though there's freedom of travel across the UK, only those who are coming to form a Christmas bubble in Scotland can actually stay in Scotland in accommodation, but that accommodation has to be in the local authority area of that person they are looking to form a bubble with. So the direct result of that, it's unfortunately impacted on a lot of boutique hotels who have maybe had independent leisure couples looking to stay, now being faced with no option other than to close their doors. So not good news. Today we hear a review of the tiers, 11 authorities coming out of level 4. The good news is that they will all come out of level 4. I think there was concern at the weekend that possibly some may stay in that place. I suspect, or the indicators are, that the majority will remain in level 3. There is a possibility Edinburgh City Centre could go into level 2, but the implications of what that might mean for travel from west to east, etc., I'm sure is one that the Cabinet will looking carefully at. The other areas of opportunity or seeing a potential tier downgrade will be in Dumfries and Galloway and the borders to a level 1 tier. But again, I think considerations around what's crossed the border in Cumbria and Northumberland will have a bearing on that decision being reached. And we're not quite sure where Aberdeen may go, because as we know, that's always been under review, and we'll wait to see. But the unfortunate thing is, obviously, if there are no, the fewer tier 2 authority areas, it just lessens the potential for people in Scotland to take a break at Christmas, and we're seeing that decline. Stephen Leckie, as you know, my chair, has now only got Crieff open. All the rest of his businesses are technically shut. He had 50 guests at the weekend. That's the scale of sort of demise of footfall. We had Fergus Ewing attend our council meeting last week. We had an EU Brexit roundtable, which was the day after the cabinet meeting, which the task force paper was tabled at. And his words were very positive. That the recommendations that were presented were regarded by the cabinet as very sound. They hadn't got the support for APD reduction because of the climate agenda, but there is a definite commitment to a route recovery fund. And I think, just picking up on Vicky's point around the importance of international, I think that's very clear. The Scottish Government recognised that the need to get international markets coming again as quickly as possible is essential to our recovery. The more immediate support, the rescue piece, which was the real first point in the task force recommendation, he did intimate that announcement of what a supplementary support package will be should come hopefully towards the end of this week, at the very least beginning of next week. I think the issue is more around the vehicle of how those grants will be delivered in. Seeing Craig Stevenson in front of me on my screen here, what was very encouraging was to see the Scottish Wholesale Association will get the £5 million grant to help the wholesalers through. We've really been pushing the point that the supply chain is absolutely, again, essential, and obviously with the impacts that are being felt elsewhere, it's putting a huge amount of strain on the supply chain as well. So at least there's some positive news there. We touched on, it was the day, obviously the Tesco and others announced that they would give back their rates rebates, and Kate Nichols and I were also on the UK Tourism Industry Council meeting the same afternoon, and we've made verbal representation around the need to try and secure or get to see the Treasury hopefully allocate some of that returned monies into the hospitality sector. Fergus very much on side with that, and will be making the case to the Treasury. Nigel Huddleston said the World and his wife had basically suggested the same thing, that should go into different sectors. But slightly worrying was the mood music coming out from the council table from Nigel, suggesting perhaps that the UK government may have turned the tone down a bit in terms of looking to support the sector because the vaccine is here now, and maybe there's less of an appetite for them to plough more money into supporting the hospitality sector. So worrying in that regard, but we know that there needs to be continued support for a longer period, and it's that rescue now which is vital. So the other side, of course, is the choreography of how the tiers will be reviewed between now and Christmas, and what comes after New Year, or after we have no New Year, so what will come into January. So we should continue to get the reviews on a weekly basis, and those tiers will be looked at, and hopefully they will come down. But I think, again, the sense is that we could see ourselves possibly going back into a tier 4 situation for the early part of January, just to quash any misbehavior or spread of virus as a result of the loosening of the restrictions. So, and hopefully that won't be the case. So in a nutshell, Roddy, that's it. The First Minister's on at 2:20 this afternoon, and I guess we'll hear what those decisions are that have been reached at the Cabinet, which is underway at this moment.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. And thank you. A very, very quick question for you, Mark, here. Does it sound like there might be any movement for restaurants and getting an extension from closing at 8 to serve food to 9 and close at 10?
Yeah, that has been one of the proposals that has been presented by the hospitality trade bodies for a reconsideration, so to in a tier 2 capacity and in actually tier 3 as well, although tier 3 would remain without alcohol. Whether or not that restriction will be loosened today, I personally doubt it. I think it's more likely, if it were to be relaxed, could be the following week. But it's certainly been presented as one that is in desperate need of review to allow that second sitting to take place, and obviously get a bit more people being able to enjoy a dine-out experience in the evening, not Scotch eggs.
Okay.
So,
Mark, very many thanks. I really appreciate your time today. I know you're dashing from one Zoom to another.
thanks a lot.
So many thanks for that. Keep flying the flag for us and fighting the good fight, and we'll hope to see you next week. Thank you very much. Vicki, I'm going to move to Cyrus Todiwala, if I may, because Cyrus has joined us as well to hopefully lift our spirits a little. So if that's all right, what I will do though is I will play your deck, and thank you very, very much indeed for the great work you're doing on our behalf. And it is comforting to know that we've got such passionate and committed people at the heart of Visit Scotland. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Roddy. I'll stop screen sharing.
Lovely. And let me have the deck of of cards, the deck of slides,
No
and
problem.
I'll make sure that gets circulated. But I'm sure we're all extremely grateful to you for everything you're doing for us and for joining us today. So thank you. Now, I'm going to turn to my friend Cyrus Todiwala. I'm sure Cyrus is known to most, if not all of us, from various activities he's been involved in over the years, television appearances, being one of those great chaps, a celebrity chef. But Cyrus has had his own challenges over the last period for a number of reasons. And I thought it would be, Cyrus is an very engaging speaker, and he's very passionate about what he does. So I thought Cyrus would be interesting, but also hopefully amusing today. And so Cyrus, hugely grateful. I know you've got an awful lot on your plate at the moment, new restaurants and restaurants closing, restaurants opening, and relocating. So we're massively grateful to you for finding a little bit of time to spend with us. So thank you very much indeed. Cyrus, let me hand you the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning, everybody, and morning, Roddy. I'm extremely sorry that I didn't log on or I didn't see your email yesterday. If Rachel
Don't
had,
worry at all.
I would have been busy zooming around doing other things because I need to get to the restaurant early today. So I just thought, boy, I'm not going to log in today. Sorry about that. But yeah, I mean,
no problem.
I know you said a lot, but many people, of course, don't have to know me, though on the Scottish borders, I guess I have been a very frequent man up and down on that side of the border as well, and keeping my presence going in Scotland with my crazy friend Tony Singh off and on. But yeah, I mean, Cyrus Todiwala, of course, chef, restaurateur, if you please to call me that. Came to this country in 1991 with my shadow, my wife Pervin, who you must have seen walking around behind me, and two little sons at the time, not little anymore, because 1991 to now, they've grown up as men. Still detest our job, of course, and still feel that we are wasting our time in this industry because all they see is ups and downs all the time. But that's the fun of this industry anyway. So it's been a real roller coaster of a journey all along, from the very beginning when I fell on the wrong side of the Home Office and they tried desperately hard to throw us out of the UK for 10 solid years, to meeting your dear friend Michael Gottlieb and setting up Cafe Spice Namaste in 1995. So 25 years of Cafe Spice Namaste now, as the world's longest standing Michelin Bib Gourmand restaurant in the guide. And so we've had a good run. We've done well. Of course, we've had our ups and downs. Being on the city fringe is not easy to survive because everything depends on the whims and fancies of the FTSE sometimes. And of course now. So it's been great. I mean, I've been very fortunate. We've done a series called The Incredible Spiceman. Many people could have seen that. I do feature regularly on various programs. Next week, we are on Channel 4 with a new program called Snack Masters. And so it goes on. But this year in particular, I mean, sorry, you said first about an anecdote. I mean, so many things go on in my mind, Roddy. But coming to lockdown, I go back to 1983 when India hosted the Commonwealth Summit. And I was in Goa, and in our hotel in Goa were 48 heads of Commonwealth state living in the hotel at one time. At that time, Sri Lanka was having its problems with the Tamil Tigers. There was something else going on. And we were under lockdown, complete lockdown. And so much so that some of us had our badges with 3 stars, 1 star, and 2 stars. So with the 3 stars, you could approach the PMs, you could approach the heads of state, the princes, the royals, who all came from all over the Commonwealth world. And the first incident that happened, so Pierre Trudeau was the Prime Minister of Canada at the time. And Mr. Trudeau was not known for following strict discipline rules when informed by the head of India at the time, Mrs. Indira Gandhi. And so everybody was flown from the airport, from their private aircraft by helicopter to a newly constructed helipad at the hotel, at the resort, and they were all brought there. He refused to travel by helicopter. He said, I do this all the time in Canada. I want to go by coach. And there was no security plan for the coach. They mustered something up together very quickly, put him on a bus, and he landed 2.5 hours later to the hotel, whereby which time Mrs. Gandhi had called a meeting and all the ADCs were setting up each PM's slot. And his slot was set up. His room number was 517. That is on the top of the hill overlooking a 15-mile stretch of beach. So Mr. Trudeau is whisked up to his room. He sees this lovely room. He gets into a shorts and t-shirts and he says, I'm going down to the beach. He didn't ask anybody what the program was. He just shot down and he got caught by the military police. So the military police had no information that a prime minister is coming down. So the soldiers nabbed him and locked him up in a little cell. And they thought it was a mercenary from Germany who trying to blow up the hotel. So Pierre Trudeau gets locked up, and in the hotel there is complete pandemonium because they can't find the Prime Minister of Canada. And the old-fashioned walkie-talkies were relaying between police officer and military police and trying to say who this criminal was that they had apprehended. And the whole hotel went bizarre. Suddenly somebody heard one of the officers saying, "Who, Trudeau? Trudeau?" They didn't understand what Trudeau was anyway. So one of the people heard and said, "Well, what do you know about Trudeau?" He said, "Oh, we've got an infiltrator locked up in this shed downstairs who is trying to blow the hotel up." Right? And finally, the whole entourage went there. They opened this little shed that was created, and there's this man laughing his sides out, sitting on a stool made out of a crate of wine, and saying what a fantastic experience he's had. So, out of every event like that, there's a great thing. So I've got lots of stories to speak about, but this is not the time for stories. So this year, we got hammered by, how would I say, a multiple lockdown, so to speak. So the beginning of the year, as we were still in India, our building got sold to a new landlord. And the first thing he did was drop us 65 notices to evict us from the building. And whilst we were still in India, we got the solicitors mustered up, and we had to start the battle of surviving within this building for a period of time that would give us an opportunity to look for something and move on. And as we returned from Bombay at the time, and things started to go all over the place, and there was lots of aggression and determination that we should not stay in the building. Of course, they never thought of asking nicely whether we will move on, and they would not like to renew the lease. They started off on an aggressive basis, and that cost us a hell of a lot of money. Soon thereafter, there was a negative diagnosis in my health, and I had to be rushed in for an emergency operation. And immediately there, I happened to be the last patient in the hospital, and bang, all the hospital got locked down. So came out of that, and whilst convalescing, the battle began, of course, with the landlord first, and the impact of the pandemic and the lockdown had not sunk in then yet. We just didn't know what to do. We were grappling on various fronts, and the battle continued. Of course, eventually we got our wits together. I couldn't open the restaurant simply because I was not allowed to be out and still convalescing. But we did manage to do something we've never done in all these years, is to look at takeaway. And what are we going to do about takeaway food? We are not successful because we are not in the area for a takeaway business. We lose from the cheap operations that exist in Brick Lane and other places down the road. But we started something, and again, reopened for a few months and then back down to lockdown. We've tried again, but we're looking at different avenues now. We're looking at various avenues. At the same time, we have now identified a site, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. I know you've been helping us, as has been Mike and other people. And so we have finally located a site which is not very far from the existing Cafe Spice. And hopefully in the next couple of weeks, the lease should be signed and work continues. We are today meeting up with the designers and everybody else and getting things organized. But there is a little funny moment there. You know Mike Gottlieb very well. Now, Mike told me, "Cyrus, as a design person, you are absolutely hopeless. You have no brains as far as design goes and layout goes. So please make sure that I get to see all the drawings and I get to see all the concepts, and you will not make a decision on that." And I said, "Okay, Mike, even though we are not connected, that's Michael Gottlieb for me, and we are going to use his skill, of course." So that's another funny part of what's going on. But yeah, having said that, it's been okay. We are working very hard, putting Instagram posts out, so I'm cooking all the time. all throughout the pandemic, I've been raising money for various charities that I'm involved with, as you know. And on Thursday, I'll be going live cooking because ICAP does once a year a donation drive, and they donate all their profits to charities on Thursday this week. And I'm raising money for the Marine Conservation Society because we need to keep our beaches clean, our oceans clean, and still have some money left to fight the battles that are going on at the moment. And so this Thursday work goes on. So that's planning was going on at the same time. And I don't know what questions you asked me, Roddy, honestly. If you have a couple of questions, please fire, because otherwise I'll keep ranting like an idiot.
Cyrus, thank you very much, and love your anecdotes. And I can hear Mike Gottlieb saying exactly that to you. Cyrus, having been through a pretty tough time this year, but with a lifetime of experience behind you, have you got any wise words of 2 or 3 things which you would suggest that people in the restaurant sector, the hotel sector should focus on coming out of the other end of this pandemic?
Well, I think like most restaurateurs, we have also suffered terribly. There are various places doing much better because the regions are doing much better. Suburbs are doing better. City center is collapsed. But the main thing is, I don't think we can ever give up hope. And regardless of how, and we know very well that our governments are not focused on hospitality as an industry that is so important to the growth and the future of UK. But we cannot give up hope, and we've never given up hope. We keep struggling, we keep fighting. We are very fortunate. Great number one, I have a great asset in Pervin. So that is one big advantage we have got. But also that we have a good team of people, and the staff have been extremely supportive. And very recently, I don't know if many people subscribe to our newsletter, but we were right down in the dumps, and 3 of our very old customers, and I'll name them actually because they deserve to be named, is John Minton, Nicholas Gooding, and I always forget his name, Howard Townsend. They started a thing called the Friends of Cafe Spice Fund. And they insisted that we put this letter out. We were very ashamed to put a letter out to tell people that we are actually moving, we need money, we are cash, poverty at the moment. And they started a fund. They put a letter out that we sent to all our database, and a fund has started. And it didn't come from us. It came from our customers who said, we cannot let you go because 25 years they've been coming to Cafe Spice. Some of them have been coming since 1992. They're quite old now, but they still keep visiting us. And so this has given us new hope that if the customer wants you, how can you give up? We cannot give up. So we are going all guns blazing. I have another problem. As you know, we operate 4 restaurants. So 2 in the hotel, in the Hilton hotels, which are at the moment closed, and a tiny little place in Buckhurst Hill doing Portuguese influenced Goan food, which is reviving the old cuisine of Goa. And so I have to also find a place where we have to set up a production unit. So we need to keep supplying those restaurants when they reopen. And so we are looking at two projects at the moment: A, re-establishing the restaurant, and B, to set up a unit that provides food for all the outlets that we service. So it's been tough, but I think for everybody, hotels, restaurants included, this is a great opportunity to think outside the box as well. I hope that this ends very soon and we can instill courage into the hearts and minds of people, because we need them back to come in confidence. But the thing is, we just cannot give up. And I think we will come out fighting much stronger and healthier than we've ever done before.
Cyrus, thank you very much. You'll be encouraged to know and pleased to know, I'm sure I received a phone call actually this morning just before this call started, from a certain Mr. Craig Stevenson, who was on the call but's had to dash off to something else, to say that there's a whole party of Scots coming down to see you at the end of January.
Yes.
To celebrate St. Andrew, but also to support you in your last days at Cafe Spice Namaste in your current location. So I think I might be seeing you sooner than you would perhaps care for. But listen, very, very best wishes to you and for the move, and best wishes to Pavan. And thank you so much for giving us your time today when I know you're unbelievably busy. And if I can just say one thing, linked to something that Cyrus just touched on. We mentioned in a previous call 2 or 3 weeks ago when Robin Hudson was our guest, this campaign, A Seat at the Table, which was set up to try and secure the government's agreement to appointing a minister for hospitality. That campaign has just received a significant sort of kick up the rear end. They've only got 45,000 of the 100,000 signatures they need. There was a call yesterday. There were 110 people, the absolute leaders of the hospitality sector, who've come together and supported by a significant social media campaign. There's a real push on to get up to the 100,000, if not 150,000 signatories to this petition. I'm going to circulate something. Can I just ask all of you that employ people, all of you that know people, you don't have to work in hospitality to support the petition. We really do need to get up to 100,000 plus to get a debate in Parliament. So I'm going to circulate stuff about that later today. I will also circulate Vicki's slides. Vicki, thank you very much once again for your time, but also for providing, well, certainly giving me confidence, and I'm sure the rest of the people on the call that we're in safe hands. So thank you very much, and I hope you'll come back and
thanks,
share.
Roddy.
Guys, I'm sorry we've run over a little bit. We've had quite a lot to pack in today, but thank you all very much indeed. I can't honestly remember off the top of my head who we've got next week, but Rachel will send you a circular with the information in it, and we'll hope to see as many of you back next week as can make it. Thank you very much again for joining us. Stay safe. Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, Cyrus.
Thank you, everybody.
All the very best. Take care.
All the best,
Best
everyone.
wishes.
See you. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Cyrus.
Take care.
You too.
Thanks, Roddy. Cheers.
Lovely to see you, Charles.
And you. God bless.
Thank you.
All the best. Take care.
Bye.
So, how do you do hashtag on the computer? Yeah, I have.